salient points of the video I wanted to share with you was his initial questions, right? Which is, what do we work so hard? For what? For this? For stuff? No, right? We don't work for the stuff. The stuff is sort of like the expression of the expression of the things we're able to do. The stuff is the manifestation of the ideas we have. The stuff is the tangible pieces of an intangible part of who we are and who we want to present to other people who we are. And the other salient point from the video is him saying, we went to the moon and we got bored. And this tension between boredom and engagement is something that I want us to think about through tonight's talk. So to start at a metaphysical level, I wanted to introduce to you one of the most beautiful words that I know, and it is this word. Can anyone tell me what this word is? Logos. Logos. Yes. So this is the word that they used in the Greek translation of the Bible, right, to describe the first sentence of the Bible, right, the Genesis of everything. They say, in the beginning, there was Logos. And if you Google Logos, which I encourage you to do, you find Logos is a high-dimensional word. Logos is a concept that is hard to sort of state simply. It is the combination of meaning and power and sort of capability. It is the manifestation of reason, right, of existence. And if you follow the Bible, you know that later on in the story, Logos became flesh, became incarnate in us, right? And so we are human beings, right? We are built out of billions of cells, and yet we have a uniquely defining quality about us, which is that we thirst for more than water, more than air, more than food. We thirst for Logos. We thirst for meaning. So this is a talk about being human. And I really like this picture from Da Vinci, drawn at the sort of intellectual peak of the Renaissance. And it is a picture that really is the union of two things. Right? Up to this point, all of the art and architecture in Europe and other places have focused on man's relationship to God, right? Defining man as small, mortal, weak, sinful, and God as being omnipresent, huge, kind, and powerful. And during the Enlightenment, during the Cultural Rebirth, we started to take our ability to measure and understand the world and put it on ourselves. And there's this beautiful, elegant sculpture sitting in one of Berlin's museums, right, of the Christ figure. You guys all know the Christ figure. But with parts of his body removed to show the inner sinews, bones, limbs, and organs that he was carrying. And it was sort of a demonstration of, at that time, people had started to be able to peel back, right, this layer of skin and understand that we are built out of things. We're built with reason and purpose, and there's really clever engineering that goes on to making a person. And so Da Vinci, by drawing a circle and putting the man into it, he started to show that man can be a measure himself. We're no longer reliant on some abstract God figure for us to find the meaning and find the boundaries of our world. So before I talk about the specific travel experiences, I would like to share a particular thought, a particular mental model that I found extremely useful, and it is a mental model that I think we can all experience. So you can get the lights. When we walk into a dark room after coming from a brightly lit one, we, at the very beginning, see nothing. That's the complete darkness. And that is because in that particular time, the spectrum that we were observing has been truncated. But our body is really good at trying to adapt to its local surroundings. So over time, our eyes widen, our pupils dilate, right? Our receptors become more primed for light, and we began to see shapes and patterns in the darkness. sensory dilation is the idea that we expand our surroundings to fill our consciousness. And at any given moment, our consciousness is full. So today's early activity of trying to think about a negative thought you had coming here, there were a few I think that were really on point about how, for example, Shin said the ground was very bumpy. and that was the thought that Shin of the spectrum of things, right? Of Shin's contextual reality, right? Being asked to examine what is on the left-hand side sweep, right? What is the thing that is troubling or bothering Shin today? Shin discovered that what was residing there was the ground, and that's a beautiful moment. But it is a moment that not all of us often appreciate because we lose sense of our boundaries. And if you live too long in paradise, too long in this beautiful Palo Alto suburb, or this beautiful Bay Area, right, the trials and tribulations you experience begin to fill your reality. And it's only through contact with other people and other experiences that are completely on the two sides of your reality do you really have the stakes to ground yourself and the stakes to feel gratitude. This is also true for our daily lives. So the clothes that we wear, these clothes you have on you right now, I don't think that many of you are feeling your clothes. You're no longer perceiving them because they've become part of your experience. If you ever put on a new watch or ever try on a new shoe, the first week is like there's something digging in your mind, some tension. And then after a while your mind adapts and it's gone. This is true for how we live life. If you ever heard the expression, time goes by really fast when you get older, it is because there are fewer landmarks in time that challenge or change the particular frames of your reality. And if you ever want to live longer, one way is to do biohacking regeneration. Another way is to rapidly change your context and restart the part of your brain that monitors for interesting things happening. Have you ever had a day where you felt like the day lasted a week? Have you ever had a week that felt like it lasted a few hours? This is why I tried to optimize my time in Europe for travel, to be able to fill as much as I could, right, the boundaries of my reality. And what I discovered is fascinating. And I discovered that here in California, right, our idea of long-term memory is like the last IPO we heard about, right, which you read it's about like 7 days.
Sure.
If you ask people to remember what happened a year ago, 2 years ago, it feels like digging back into ancient times. Right? And even though the internet documents everything, most of the things are lost to the floodgates of information. So if it's on the second page of Google, to us it's lost forever. In Europe, that's not true. In Europe, there are coexisting in time and place historical artifacts lasting for millennia, for 1,000 years. And I want to introduce you to another one of these words, called palimpsest. A palimpsest is a description of the old papyrus scrolls they used to have, right, at a time when paper making was a precious art. And what they used to do was, because paper was so precious, they would write on it once, and then if the message was delivered, they would erase the message incompletely, and then write on it again. After 4, 5, 10 iterations, the paper became a collection of all the things that existed on that paper previously, each one imperfectly erased, but removed to give space to the next one. And the boundaries of words, the boundaries of lines that would form one word actually would bleed over into the next one. And this is what I saw in Europe. I saw that civilization itself was built on these cultural fragments, intentionally left preserved to remind us of the deepness of the well of time that we draw from. Some of you might have heard the story. This is a picture of Brandenburg Gate. It's one of the Victory Gates in Berlin. And if you walk to Brandenburg Gate, you stand up close and personal at it, and you look at the pillars. You'll find the pillars strangely decorated with pocket marks. Right? But sometimes holes, sometimes chipped pieces, sometimes entire column pieces just removed. And it looks imperfect. Right? It looks not cared for. But this is one of the most intentional pieces of cultural design that I think we can be proud of as human beings. Because if you ever played video games that involved shooting an absolutely horrible, evil creature that did not deserve your empathy to shoot, you probably shot Nazi zombies. And so when I went to Berlin, on top of my mind was the question, how did the Berliners feel about this? How did Germany respond to the fact that they are cast often, or a piece of their history is cast often, as one of the most evil incarnate things that exist? And what I found was not rejection, was not anger, was not any sort of indignation. What I found was humble acceptance. And the Berliners that I met wore it as a mantle about the responsibility they felt they owed the rest of the world for the thing that happened. So I'm going to tell you a few pieces of history that are not usually revealed. One of them is that Hitler, for all of the ways that he was evil incarnate, Hitler was elected to power in a democratic state. In a state not dissimilar from this one. In a state where people voted to choose who was going to be the successor, who was going to have the reins of power. And sure, after he rose to power, he dismantled the ladder of democracy, right, that he ascended and sort of built his own Gestapo and sort of started to build a totalitarian state. But the very early days of Hitler were the ones of him running for president. And that should send chills down your spine. Because if we could elect Hitler, and I cannot think that the people who elected Hitler were themselves evil in any capacity, then it shows that we are susceptible to manipulation. Berlin, for all the faults, right, of World War II and Germany, Berlin today is a mature post-national city. Case in point. There was a World Cup recently. Some of you might have saw the sort of crazy thing that happened in Holland. But the person who won, the country that won the World Cup was Germany. Right? And today and yesterday, the Giants are playing. Right? Traffic is blocked. The bars are flooded, and tonight there's going to be crazy partying or rioting. But after Germany won the World Cup, everyone in Berlin showed up to work the next day at 9 a.m. I was like blown away. I was like, why? How did that happen? Right? And it's because that ingrained deeply into the psychology of the people who felt like they were partially responsible for the atrocities committed in World War II is a suspicion, deep-seated suspicion of the fires of nationalist feeling that propaganda instilled into them to get them to do terrible things in the name of us and them. And so today, Berlin proudly wears these scars of Russia and America coming in and taking the city by force, proudly wears the bullet holes, right, blown into its cultural remnants, proudly does not repair these marks for the sake of reminding the people who live in Berlin that it is their responsibility to be suspicious of the people who teach you and proclaim to you statements of us and them, of we are the righteous and they are the evil. The next story is perhaps one of my favorite, and it is something that I completely did not expect, and sort of shows to me that there are gems scattered in like history, so many gems that we have no idea about. And the only way that you ever get to know about them is you like stumble upon them and then you hope that someone tells you about them. So I'm going to tell you about this one. Right? We're living in an age where we're running out of resources. Right? There's a huge drought in California, and yet there's people like watering their like I don't know, crazy green lush piece of land, right, with the water that is not being able to be used by the wildlife that surrounds us. 120 years ago, there was a guy who said, you know, the way that we interface with nature, the way that we human beings build and relate to nature, kind of is broken. Right? We try to impose order where order should not exist. When we try to impose straight lines or curved or smooth lines, we should have done better. His name was Gaudi, Antonio Gaudi. He was an architect. And he is perhaps, in my opinion, one of the greatest architects that has ever lived that no one knows the name of. And this picture you see here, this like sort of psychedelic explosion of like flowers and light, is actually his masterpiece. It is called the Sagrada Familia, and it is a cathedral that has been in the building for the last 123 years. And it's still not complete. It will be complete in about another 15 years. But what Gaudi did was, when he grew up, instead of going to architecture school, instead of trying to learn mechanical engineering, Gaudi went and just walked through nature. And he had a very observant eye. He looked at how things work. He looked at how like this thin, fragile stem could hold a leaf up. And how frogs, when they jumped, right, they used like this quick twitch of the muscle and then got somewhere quick. And all of these lessons about how nature was built, he internalized and tried to recreate. And so there are some people who give Gaudi the seemingly like lofty name of God's architect. But it is a name that I think very aptly describes him. Gaudi was never an arrogant man. He had no ego. Right? In the last days of his life, the last 10 years of his life, when he lost his family, his wife, his children, he wrote in his diary, he said, I have nothing left to live for but the work of God. And so he spent all of his time and energy building and designing this church. There are many cathedrals built in Europe. There are many built in the Gothic manner. Right? This is like an architectural discovery that if you wanted to support a huge roof, you could actually have two side pillars, not straight ones, but sort of like slanted ones, called flying buttresses, that you could build up into the arch. And some people described these Gothic cathedrals, impressive as they are, as a sermon in stone. Because you walk in and there's very few lights, because the entire roof has to be solid in order to hold the entire cathedral up. It's dark and Gothic, from which we derive the cultural evolution of the word Goth. Sagrada Familia is described as a sermon in broccoli. Because every one of these arches, right, always like they all stem out. They go like this. And at his stage and to our this day and age, like we don't have many things that look like this. But yet, from very simple forms in nature, Gaudi was able to discover some of the most remarkable engineering principles. So here's one that he built the Sagrada Familia with. You take a piece of string, let it hang by its own weight. Forms an arch. This arch is called the canonary arch. It is one of the most robust arches you can ever build in engineering. And so what he used to do was he used to build life-size, like sort of 2-scale replica models, and he used to take a piece of metal, let it hang, trace it on drawing paper, right? Turn it upside down, and that would be the arch that goes into his cathedral. And with that, he was able to create space and light in a way that no other cathedral to today has seen. And that is why this is so bright, because every one of these is holes, right? Every one of these lets light in. Another thing that Gaudi did, he started to use recycled materials 123 years ago. Right? He wanted to create these curved shapes. It's like a giant salamander. At a time when brick making and sort of like outside pottery making technology was you could only do straight lines. So Gaudi went to the waste piles of the refuse thrown away from other buildings and collected large slabs of colored tile. Went home, broke them into tiny pieces, little tiny shards, right? And used those shards to essentially cover the surfaces of the salamanders. Seems a very simple idea. That engineering challenge that he solved, right, through using seemingly sort of like reusing materials in a sustainable fashion, transcended, sublimated from that engineering challenge to now an aesthetic choice. And so there are T-shirts today printed in Barcelona and elsewhere. T-shirts, right, fabric that is like loose already with mosaic patterns. So I think as we think here about this